So very often, the most creative people also have the most pain, which is why so many creative people escape from their pain through all kinds of dysfunctions like addictions and so on. Let me tell you about a friend of mine who lives in Calgary. Her name is Shannon Doog, and Shannon is 48 years old now. And when she was 37, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. The stage 4 meant that the cancer was already in her bones by the time it was diagnosed. At that time, she had 2 young children, aged 1 and 3, and married to a well-to-do businessman. She herself was a very high-functioning executive for Microsoft in Calgary. And then she's diagnosed. She had the perfect life, perfect marriage, perfect home, of course. And then she's diagnosed. And healthy, physically, fit, always ate well. And then she's diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And she has a transformation. Now, she gets the best medical advice she can get anywhere in North America, and she traveled to New York and elsewhere. She got the best medical treatment, and with that, she was given 1 year to live, because that's the prognosis. Stage 4, despite the medical treatment, chances are you'll be dead in 1 year. Now, a year ago in February, just a year ago now, Shannon traveled to the Napa Valley of California with some of her friends, and they celebrated her 10th year survival and her 47th birthday. And the transformation that she experienced was that when she was diagnosed and started paying attention, she realized that her life had not been her life, because she was sexually abused as a child. Her response to the abuse was, of course, as many children will experience, it can't be about the adults, it's about me. If this terrible thing happened to me, I must be a very bad person. So I have to be very good to compensate. So the good daughter who doesn't talk about it, doesn't disturb the waters, the good employee, the good student, the good wife who doesn't talk about the husband's addiction issues, because that would again disturb the waters. And when she's diagnosed and she decides she wants to live, she says, the hell with all this perfection and goodness. And she confronts her family, her origin, about the abuse that she had endured, and she confronts her husband, and she starts living authentic. And she leaves the job, by the way, which wasn't her. Wasn't really expressing who she was. 11 years later, the cancer is still in her bones, but it's completely inactive. But she knows that if she wants to stay alive, she needs to stay authentic. It was in 1994 that Antonio Damasio, a neuroscientist, published his book, Descartes' Error. And here's what he says. And he's talking about learning. And he's saying that he used to assume that learning, cognition, intellectualization, was a separate entity and a separate process from emotionality. And in Latin, Homo sapiens, the name of our species, the man who knows. So we're kind of assuming an intellectual definition of humanness when we say Homo sapiens. But Damasio said in his seminal work, in 20 years ago now almost, is that cognition is actually something that rests on an edifice of emotion. So that the basis of learning and cognition is actually our emotional being. And that emotional being is very much connected to our visceral states, the states of our liver, of our stomach, of our heart, of our lungs, of our internal organs. And that the mind itself and the brain itself is an organizational entity that brings together information that's coming at it from the outside and from the inside at the same time. And in fact, the brain receives many more messages from the inside of the body than sometimes it does from the outside. And the messages that it receives from the inside has a lot to do with how well we can engage the external world. So that means our capacity to pay attention and to learn have a lot to do with what's happening internally on the visceral and emotional level and what our gut feelings are telling us. And so in a society where people are less and less connected to their gut feelings, there's less and less engagement with the realities of the external world. Even though we're externally focused, we are externally focused in a less efficient manner because of that disconnect. And let me ask you this question, and I'll ask for a show of hands. How many of you had the experience of having a strong gut feeling about something, ignoring it, and being sorry afterwards? You see that just about everyone raise their hands. Now, how many of you have had the experience, the adverse experience, of having a powerful gut feeling, ignoring it, and being glad afterwards? Now we have 1 or 2 hands in an audience of many hundreds. In other words, there's something about gut level cognition that is absolutely valid, and we ignore it at our peril. But that's a function of living in a society that actually cuts us off from our gut feelings. So that there's something internal that knows, that is much stronger than what intellect is telling us. In any contest between the internal knowledge and the intellectual knowledge, 99% of the time, that internal knowing will be accurate and the intellectual rationalization will be inaccurate.